doing fine. In today's video, this is the third video from the chapter 17 respiration, that is exchange of gases. In today's video, I'm going to discuss about the three stages of respiration. That is, the respiration processes are divided into three stages. The first stage is the breathing, that is called the pulmonary ventilation, which is a physical process. The second stage is the exchange of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide gases between the alveoli and the tissue. And the third stage, that is the transport of gases by the blood. So do watch the video. And let's start with the first step, that is the breathing. Breathing is an extracellular, energy consuming and physical process. It involves the movement of the thorax, expansion and deflation of the lungs, and the flow of air into the lungs by creating a pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. The movement of diaphragm and a specialized set of muscles, that are the external and internal intercostal muscles between the ribs, that help in the generation of such difference of pressure gradients between the lungs and the atmosphere. Breathing mainly involve again two steps. They are the inspiration and the expiration. Let me describe about inspiration first and then expiration. So inspiration, it is also known as inhalation. It is an active process by which fresh air enters into the lungs. It can occur if the pressure within the lungs, that is the intrapulmonary pressure, is less than the atmospheric pressure. That is negative pressure in the lungs with respect to the atmospheric pressure. So what plays an important role in building up this pressure or the negative pressure? They are the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles. Diaphragm. It is lowered by the contraction of its muscle fiber and become flat. This causes an increase in the volume of the thoracic chamber in the anterior-posterior axis. The external intercostal muscles, they occur between the ribs, that is the internal intercostal muscle are related to expiration, while external intercostal muscle is related to inspiration. So just remember like this: E not for expiration, I not for inspiration. In this way you can just remember the opposite, that is the external intercostal muscle is responsible for the inspiration. So what happens here? The external intercostal muscles contract and pull the ribs and the sternum upward and outward, thus increasing the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis. Thus, the overall increase in the volume of the thoracic cavity causes an increase in the pulmonary volume. As a result, there is a decrease in the intrapulmonary pressure, that is inside the lungs there is a negative pressure, and due to this negative pressure, the greater atmospheric pressure outside the body now causes the air to flow rapidly into the internal layers, which sequentially lead to the alveoli. From the alveoli, the oxygen passes into the blood of the capillaries and carbon dioxide diffuses out from the blood to the alveolus lumen. Next step is the expiration, which is the another part of breathing. Now what happens in expiration? It is a passive process, unlike the inspiration. As I told you earlier, inspiration is an active process, that is the energy dependent process, while expiration is a passive process by which carbon dioxide is expelled out from the lungs. It takes place when the intrapulmonary pressure is higher than the atmospheric pressure. This is just the opposite of the inspiration. You will just remember there is a positive pressure in the lungs and a negative pressure outside the lungs, that is the atmosphere. So the movement of the muscles involved in this breathing mechanism are as follows. Same like the diaphragm also plays an important role here too, but the internal intercostal muscles plays an important role. So how do this diaphragm and internal intercostal muscle plays an important role in expiration? Let's discuss. The diaphragm. The muscles fiber that is present in the diaphragm, they relax, making it convex in shape and decreasing the volume of the thoracic cavity. The internal intercostal muscles, these muscles contract, thus pulling the ribs down and inward, decreasing the thoracic volume. The overall volume of the thoracic cavity thus decreases, thereby reducing the pulmonary volume. As a result, the intrapulmonary pressure increases slightly above the atmospheric pressure. This in turn causes the expulsion of the air from the lungs. The process of expiration is simpler than inspiration. The second stage in the respiration process is the exchange of gases. The exchange of gases between alveoli and blood, and between blood and tissue cells. Exchange between lungs, alveoli and pulmonary capillary is called external respiration. The alveolar wall is very thin and richly supplied with blood, and it is also called the respiratory membrane or alveolar capillary membrane. The capillary membrane is so thin, it is only about 0.2 millimeter thick. So this membrane has a limit of gaseous exchange between alveoli and pulmonary blood, which is called diffusing capacity. At a particular pressure difference, the diffusion of carbon dioxide is about 20 to 25 times faster than the oxygen. Thus, the amount of the air that can diffuse through the membrane per unit difference in partial pressure is much higher as compared to the oxygen. So you can notice here the partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide at different parts of the respiratory system involved in diffusion is compared, and what are the values in the respiratory gases volume in the atmospheric air, alveoli, deoxygenated blood, oxygenated blood and the tissue. So from the above table we can see the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli is 104 millimeter of mercury, which is higher than that of the deoxygenated blood in the capillary or pulmonary artery, which is only 95 millimeter of mercury. So there is a diffusion of oxygen from the alveoli to the blood capillary. Also, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is higher in the deoxygenated blood, that is 45 millimeter of mercury, than in the alveoli. So therefore, carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood to the alveoli. The third stage in the respiration process, that is the breathing and gaseous exchange, is the transport of gases by the blood. Transport of oxygen. Oxygen is transported by two methods. As dissolved gas, about 3% of oxygen in the blood is carried in the dissolved state through the plasma, and the second method is as oxyhemoglobin. About 97% of the oxygen is carried by RBC in the blood as oxyhemoglobin. Let's recapitulate how the transport of gases, that is oxygen, takes place by blood. So as I told you, the third stage is the transport of gases by blood. So here the two gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, are transported in various ways. Let me first discuss about the transport of oxygen by the blood. Transport of oxygen takes place in two ways. The first way is as dissolved gas in the plasma, that is only 3%, and the second way of transport of oxygen is as oxyhemoglobin, that is 97%. So the hemoglobin is a respiratory carrier that binds with oxygen in the lungs to form oxyhemoglobin. There are four main regulating factors that affect the binding rate of oxygen with the hemoglobin. They are the partial pressure of oxygen, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, the hydrogen ion concentration in the blood, and the temperature. This is the transport of carbon dioxide. Now, how is carbon dioxide transported by the blood? Carbon dioxide is transported in three ways. The first way is in the dissolved state, which is only about 7% in the plasma. The second way is transport of carbon dioxide as bicarbonate ion, which is the main transport mechanism of carbon dioxide, which is about 70%. And finally, transport as carbaminohemoglobin, which is 20 to 25%. So the transport of carbon dioxide in the three ways. The first way, as I told you, it is about the 7% of the carbon dioxide is dissolved or transported by dissolved form because of the high solubility rate of the carbon dioxide in the plasma. The second way is as bicarbonate ion. So carbon dioxide binds with water, reacts with water to form carbonic acid in the presence of an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Further, this carbonic acid in the presence of carbonic anhydrase, it produces bicarbonate ion and release hydrogen ion. So this reaction is faster in the RBC because they contain an enzyme because of the carbonic anhydrase. Now hydrogen ion is released during this reaction and it binds to hemoglobin, triggering the Bohr's effect. Now what is Bohr's effect? That I am going to describe you just a bit later. And the third type of the transport of carbon dioxide is as carbaminohemoglobin. The carbaminohemoglobin, nearly 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide is carried by hemoglobin as carbaminohemoglobin. The carbon dioxide entering the blood combines with the amine group of the reduced hemoglobin, and this reaction releases oxygen from the oxyhemoglobin. There are various factors that affect the binding of carbon dioxide and hemoglobin. Let me discuss that. I told you that there are two main factors that affect the binding of carbon dioxide and hemoglobin. They are the partial pressure of carbon dioxide and the partial pressure of oxygen, which is the major factor. Now in tissues, the carbon dioxide or the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is higher and the partial pressure of oxygen is lower. So more binding of carbon dioxide occur, while in the alveoli the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low and the partial pressure of oxygen is high. So the dissociation of carbon dioxide from carbaminohemoglobin takes place, that is carbon dioxide which is bound to hemoglobin from the tissue is delivered at the alveoli. So every 100 milliliter of deoxygenated blood delivers approximately 4 ml of carbon dioxide to the alveoli. Now as I told you that I will discuss about Bohr's effect. So what is Bohr's effect? Now Bohr's effect is a physiological process which was described by Danish physiologist Christian Bohr in 1904. Now this observation of the Christian Bohr, he stated that the oxyhemoglobin, there is a dissociation curve that is called oxygen dissociation curve that I am going to discuss a bit later. So the oxygen binding affinity is inversely related both to acidic and to the concentration of carbon dioxide. So this is actually Bohr's effect. So it refers to the shift of the oxygen dissociation curve caused by the changes in the concentration of carbon dioxide or the pH of the environment. Since the carbon dioxide reacts with water to form carbonic acid, just I mentioned, an increase in the carbon dioxide results in the decrease in the blood pH that results in the hemoglobin protein releasing their load of oxygen. So conversely, a decrease in the carbon dioxide provokes an increase in the pH, which results in the hemoglobin picking up more molecule of oxygen. So this is actually Bohr's effect. So I am going to discuss about oxygen dissociation curve or oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. It is the curve obtained on plotting percentage saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen against PO2. This curve thus obtained is a sigmoid shaped or S-shaped curve under normal conditions. Now this curve is very useful to study the effect of factors like PCO2 or hydrogen ion concentration and temperature etc. on binding of the oxygen with hemoglobin. Now you can see here in the graph the lower part of the curve indicate the dissociation of the oxygen from hemoglobin, while the upper part of the curve indicate the acceptance of oxygen by hemoglobin. The oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve is shifted either to the left or to the right by various factors. So shift to the left indicate association of oxygen by hemoglobin. It occurs in the alveoli, whereas when it is low, that is partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low, high partial pressure of oxygen and lesser hydrogen ion concentration and low temperature. This will help to shift the curve to the left, and the reverse will happen if the curve is shift to the right. So my dear students, it was all about today's topic about breathing, pulmonary ventilation, exchange of gases and transport of gases. I have also discussed about the Bohr's effect and the oxygen dissociation curve when it shift to right and when it does shift to left. So in the next video I will discuss about the neural mechanism of regulation of respiration, as well as I will discuss about the Bohr's effect versus Haldane effect. If you have any queries regarding the 3 topics that I have discussed today in today's video, do comment me in the comment section below. And if you have liked the video, then do share it with your friends, and you can subscribe my channel if you have not done it yet. Thanks for watching the video.